Fire department, what's the address of your emergency?
Yeah, hi. I'm going to live over at River Ranch Apartments, and I think there's a fire upstairs in the apartment above me. Stay with me. I'll get someone to ground.
On November 28, 2014, firefighters responded to an emergency call from an apartment complex in Fort Worth, Texas. What initially appeared to be an out-of-control fire would prove to be more tragic as the smoke cleared. First responders discovered the body of 31-year-old Ashley Harris on the floor of her gutted bedroom. But when investigators began looking closely at Ashley's body and examining the cause of the fire, it led them to something more sinister than an accidental death. Patrick Sweet was sleeping in his River Ranch apartments in Fort Worth, Texas, on the morning of November 28, 2014. The day after Thanksgiving. He was abruptly awakened by a loud scream, followed by a thud from the apartment upstairs. He turned to check the time and discovered that it was 7:30 a.m. The sounds were followed by heavy breathing, and shortly afterwards, he heard the front door of the apartment above open and close. He assumed his neighbor, 31-year-old Ashley Harris, was leaving for work, peering out the window. He saw Ashley's white pickup truck still parked in its space, while an unfamiliar black car was leaving the parking lot. He returned to bed, trying to put the odd incident out of his mind. A few moments later, Patrick's carbon monoxide detector began beeping. Patrick went down and drove his car to a safe place and waited for the firefighters to come. Firemen from the Fort Worth Fire Department went to the site to put out the fire in apartment number 1505. While the flames died down, firemen opened all the windows to enable the smoke to clear away. But while they searched around, seeking for the source of the fire, they made a gruesome discovery. The body of a lady thought to be Ashley was discovered lying on the bedroom floor at the foot of the bed. Ashley Harris was born on November 2, 1983, in Fort Worth, Texas, to Tommy and Monica Harris. She was the youngest of 3 daughters and had 2 older sisters, named Carrie and Melissa. Unlike other young girls, Ashley wasn't interested in playing with dolls or makeup. She was more of the family tomboy who enjoyed getting into scrapes, playing sports, and creating art and music. Ashley's parents eventually divorced while she was still quite young, but Tommy and Monica continued to co-parent their girls and ensured they had a cent-table upbringing. Both her parents would go on to remarry, and Ashley would become part of a large and loving blended family. After graduating high school, many thought Ashley might follow in the footsteps of her father Tommy and stepfather Chuck by going into law enforcement. But she was still unsure about her future, and Ashley's life appeared to be fitting into place until tragedy struck, sweeping all her dreams away. After the fire was extinguished and Ashley's body had been found, the firefighter jumped into action. Fire Lieutenant Jared Pavlechko checked Ashley's wrist for a pulse, but discovered none. In an even more unsettling twist, he observed that her hands and ankles were bound together with duct tape. There was also blood around her body. Lieutenant Pavlechko requested assistance from the Fort Worth Police Department and the crime scene unit after determining that the fire was not an accident. Meanwhile, neighbors of the apartment complex and some of Ashley's acquaintances gathered in the parking lot, hoping for answers. As they watched police officers erect barricades and crime scene tape, they realized something dreadful had happened to Ashley. As word spread about the fire, more of Ashley's acquaintances, co-workers, and family members hurried to the complex. Inside the apartment, arson investigator Wallace Hood began investigating the cause of the fire. He observed that the fire was focused in the bedroom, particularly on the bed and Ashley. Hood believes that the fire was caused by an open flame, possibly a matchstick or slider. He also discovered an open bottle of rubbing alcohol which was likely used as the accelerant beneath the mattress in the bedroom. Hood discovered the disabled smoke detector, but the sprinkler system in the apartment was still on. Hood believed that whoever set the fire did so as an afterthought to cover up Ashley's murder because they had forgotten to disable the sprinkler system in their haste. Detective Sadilla arrived at the scene, along with his partner, Detective Ernie Pate. Both detectives made their way into Ashley's apartment to examine the crime scene. The living room already had decorations that Ashley had started to put up for the upcoming holidays. One of the things Sadillo noticed was that the front door had been kicked in with force, but there was no sign of a struggle in the bedroom. Ashley's body remained unmoved on the floor beside the bed. Sadillo knelt down and began his own examination. He took note of the bindings on Ashley's wrists and ankles and observed she'd been partially burned, but not enough to completely disfigure her body. When he turned her over, it was clear that Ashley's death was definitely a homicide. Ashley had been beaten so badly that blood had seeped into the carpet beneath her body, and her throat had been slit. The medical examiner would later confirm that Ashley's death was caused by excessive blunt force trauma and asphyxiation due to strangulation. The autopsy would reveal no trace of smoke in her lungs, indicating that she died before the fire was started. Investigators at the crime scene were able to identify Ashley from her driver's license, which was found in her wallet on the bathroom counter. There was also a tattoo of Jeremiah 29:11 on Ashley's body. Detective Sadillo now faced the daunting task of informing the growing crowd of Ashley's death. When Sadillo walked out to meet the crowd and asked if the Bible verse Jeremiah 29:11 meant anything to them, many people in the crowd fell into hysterics, confirming it was one of Sadillo, called for calm and asked everyone to wait inside the apartment lobby for questioning so they could determine out what transpired that night. Detective Sadillo began reconstructing Ashley's activities the night before to establish a timeline. He spoke with Ashley's friend, Alexis Torres, who lives in the same complex. Alexis informed him that on the evening of November 27, 2014, Ashley and a group of close friends celebrated an early Thanksgiving dinner because Ashley had to work that night in preparation for the Black Friday sale. The next day, Alexis was caring for Ashley's pet dog, Nala. When Ashley returned from work around 3:40 a.m. on Friday morning, Alexis carried Nala back to the apartment, where the two ladies spoke briefly before Alexis left around 4 a.m. Alexis hadn't heard from Ashley in a while, and it wasn't until after 6:55 a.m. that morning that she noticed a call from her. However, when she tried to return the call, there was no answer. The detective then asked the gathered group if they'd noticed any unusual activity last evening or early that morning. Ashley's downstairs neighbor Patrick immediately spoke up, describing the strange sounds he'd heard from Ashley's home that morning, right before his smoke detector went off. Patrick had found the sounds concerning, but believed that Ashley was just getting ready to leave for work. When questioned if anyone had heard the front door of the apartment being kicked in, Patrick suspected Ashley had gotten a lift from a co-worker, Jeff Carsier. Ashley's friend said that it was his fault. Jeff explained that he tried to get into Ashley's apartment to help her, but couldn't manage to get through the smoke. He only got to the kitchen before turning away. There was no sign of Ashley, and calls to her phone went unanswered. But Jeff was able to grab Ashley's dog, Nala, who was frantically trying to escape another of Ashley's neighbors. Stephen Lee then offered some vital information. He informed Sadillo that while smoking a cigarette on his balcony about 7 a.m. that morning, he noticed a strange car in the parking lot. Stephen was positive the automobile was a black Infiniti G35 with a false toll tag sticker on the windshield. It was parked next to Ashley's white pickup truck, so he figured it was a friend or family member visiting. After hearing Stephen's account, Patrick confirmed that the car spotted leaving the complex after 7:30 a.m. was likely a black Infiniti G35. The black Infiniti remained parked at the site. Detective Cedillo was curious about searching Ashley's pickup truck for lost. Ashley's front door had been kicked in by her friend Jeff, but the deadbolts were still engaged, indicating that the killer had closed the apartment door before leaving. A search of Ashley's apartment found that nothing of value had been stolen, but no one could locate Ashley's ring of keys, which held her apartment, truck keys, and store keys. It appeared that the killer had stolen the keys, but it made no sense. Ashley's truck was remained in the parking lot, so why had the killer stolen the keys, but not her automobile? Detective Cedillo went to Alexis for additional information, asking her if she knew anyone who owned a black Infiniti G35. Alexis didn't, but Ashley's store manager, Chris Cravey, who was there in the audience, promptly gave an answer. Chris informed Cedillo that one of his female employees, 25-year-old Carter Canties, had a black Infiniti G35. Carter worked at the store's Amarillo, Texas branch, which was more than 5 hours away from Ashley's apartment. But when Cedillo looked up Carter's address, he discovered she lived only 2 miles away. Detective Cedillo and his partner Ernie decided to drive by Carter's apartment and saw a black Infiniti G35 parked in the complex. Intrigued by the connection, Cedillo contacted the store manager Chris to inquire about Carter while they staked out her residence. Carter had worked as an assistant store manager at the Amarillo location of American Eagle until she hired her boyfriend, 19-year-old David Mallory. The store policy did not allow employees to date each other. Given Carter's good work record, she was offered a chance to transfer to the Hulen Mall location where Ashley worked. But soon after Carter made the move, her boyfriend David was fired from the Amarillo store after missing 3. Chris told detectives that there were rumors of a rivalry between Carter and Ashley owing to Ashley's fame. This animosity increased after a robbery happened on August 24, 2014, at the Hulen Mall store. Ashley discovered the safe had been left open and that $18,000 had been stolen. Together with Chris, the loss prevention unit, and another employee, they watched the surveillance video. It was clear that the burglar knew exactly where to go, making it seem like an inside job. Ashley and the other employee were sure that the man in the video was Carter's boyfriend, David Mallory. Chris realized that Carter had locked the store. Carter was still dating David on the night of the robbery and had even falsified a social security number so that he could be employed. Suspecting that Carter was an accomplice in the robbery, she was suspended for a week while investigations continued at the store. In the end, Carter was fired for negligence, but no official charges were filed against Carter or David. Cedillo believed that the attack on Ashley was an act of revenge, but he was still perplexed as to why the couple had taken Ashley's ring of keys, including her store keys. As the detectives kept an eye on Carter's apartment, the answer was about to be revealed. While waiting for his suspects to make the first move, Cedillo applied for search warrants for Carter and David's cell phone records, vehicles, and apartments. Carter and David exited from the apartment at 7:15 a.m. while this was being processed. Carter was wearing a nondescript gray sweatshirt and black hat, and the couple got into the black Infiniti G35 and drove off. The investigators followed the couple as they drove towards the Hulen Mall on Saturday, November 29, 2014. Carter stepped out of the vehicle while David drove the car to another exit. The detectives devised a plan to stop David and check if he'd been in violation of any traffic laws. They pulled up next to David and asked why he was waiting in the parking lot so early in the morning. David explained that he was waiting for his girlfriend, who'd gone to the Aeropostale store to fetch some paperwork, as she had just started a new job at the store. Detective Cedillo made his way into the detective pate was fortunate, however, because David was not carrying his license, allowing him to be taken into police custody. The investigators waited outside for Carter as the Infiniti G35 was hauled away, but Carter was never seen exiting the mall. The detectives then returned to Carter's apartment, where they found her in the laundry room, dressed in pink scrubs and doing her laundry. Cedillo asked Carter if she'd want to address any questions about the recent robbery at the American Eagle store. Carter quickly consented and joined them to the police station. At the police station, Carter remained cool and answered Cedillo's questions honestly, maintaining the interview. Simple Cedillo answered normal questions about her history and work to keep her talking. He casually questioned her about her Thanksgiving dinner, and Carter went on to explain the food. Carter had attended West Texas A&M University before moving to Fort Worth to work at American Eagle Outfitters. She lied to Cedillo that she was the store manager at American Eagle, but admitted to having lost her job after accidentally leaving the door unlocked and allowing a robber to get into the store. After more questioning, Cedillo went back to asking Carter about Thanksgiving and what she had done after the celebratory dinner. Carter explained that she and David had spent the night at home watching movies.
I made turkey, and there was stuffing and mashed potatoes and green bean casserole, and this cabbage bacon salad that my mom.
Cedillo changed tactics and asked her what she'd done that morning. Carter stated she'd woke up briefly and spoken to David before returning to sleep when she woke up again. After David left, Cedillo confronted Carter about the LIE because he had followed her car to the mall that morning, but Carter flatly rejected the claim. Carter was then left alone in the room, and surveillance tape showed her trying to wipe out the water bottle after drinking from it, with nothing to detain them in prison. Carter and David were allowed to leave the station, as investigators worked to get physical evidence to charge them. Despite letting Carter and David go free, Detective Cedillo was undeterred. Later that day, on November 29, 2014, investigators began searching the couple's apartment and both their cars, a black Infiniti G35 that belonged to Carter and a white Cadillac that was registered to David. In the apartment, they found a box with a taser still inside, strands of Duke knife sharpening stone, and a 9mm cartridge, a cell phone, a walkie-talkie, a deer knife, and a kitchen knife. Investigators also found a plastic tub that contained a pair of boots, another cell phone, clothing, and a tarp, still wrapped in its original packaging. Under the driver's seat lay a 9mm Glock with a round still in the chamber. Detectives recovered the keys to David's car from inside the black Infiniti G335 and began searching the Cadillac. In the boot, they found 2 shovels, a box of plastic sheets, and rope. The couple's cell phone records didn't reveal any messages alluding to Ashley's murder, but it was evident that they were planning something on David's phone. They found images of Ashley's apartment taken days before her murder. There was also a set of location coordinates that pointed to an area in Lutters, Texas. When Cedillo and his team arrived at the site, they discovered that a human's grave had been dug out. Surveillance footage from Huen Mall from Saturday morning showed that Carter had gone directly to the American Eagle store that was closed and tried to unlock the door with Ashley's keys. However, the store manager, Chris Cravey, had changed the locks after learning about Ashley's death. When her break-in attempt failed, Carter quickly walked away. More surveillance footage showed her exiting the mall in the direction of her apartment, armed with physical evidence. Detectives moved to arrest the couple on December 4, 2014. Carter was detained in Lubbock, Texas, and David was apprehended in Amarillo, Texas. They were charged with 1 count of capital murder each and were placed on $100,000 bond. In May 2016, Carter Canties went on trial for the murder of Ashley Harris. She pleaded not guilty to all charges. The prosecution team theorized that Carter had murdered Ashley as revenge for having her fired from the store following the robbery. At the same time, Carter intended to use Ashley's store keys to steal money from the store safe after the Black Friday shopping sale. Carter maintained that she did not commit the murder, but had been asleep in her apartment at the time. She then dragged David into the fold and told the court that he pressured her into robbing the American Eagle store, threatening to kill her family and hurt her. She claimed that to punish her, David had allowed several of his friends to assault her. The prosecution refuted her allegation by showing video evidence of her buying the shovels, tarp rope, and bungee cord. David was called to testify against Carter, but he pleaded the Fifth right invoked by the accused to avoid incriminating themselves by remaining silent. The prosecution also pointed out Carter's remarkable ability to lie without a second thought, requesting that these behaviors be considered when making a decision. Having heard all the evidence presented, the jury found Carter guilty of capital murder. On May 26, 2016, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In August 2016, the jury also found David Mallory guilty of capital murder. He too was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For those who knew and loved Ashley, a bright guide in light had been extinguished forever. Her loved ones continued to remember her and the positive impact she had on their lives in such a short time. Hers was a beautiful life that was taken too soon and in much too cruel a manner. So today, we ask you about your thoughts on the case. What drives people to kill in the name of revenge? Could anything have been done to prevent Ashley's death? Let us know in the comment section below.